Matthew 7:7 says, "Ask, and it will be given. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened unto you." In season 1, we talk through denial and the disappointment that leads us to it. What happens when we ask and it doesn't happen? In this episode, you'll hear from Reverend Terrence McKinley, Senior Pastor of Campbell AME in Southeast Washington, D.C. Reverend McKinley, a graduate of Cornell and Princeton, is managing the racial justice portfolio at Sojourners. Over the course of his service, Reverend McKinley has been committed to scholarship, leadership, and education, as well as a confronting of broken systems to meet the needs of people. Stay tuned. I am Dr. Shauna Knox, and this is Further, where we explore the real Christ and the real you. The way to life is extremely narrow, and very few of us ever even find it. But let's keep looking. We'll do it together. So, Reverend McKinley, how would you introduce the very core of who you are in 3 short sentences?
So we're starting with deep questions.
Yes, we're going right in.
I would describe myself as someone who loves God, loves people, and loves justice. I say loves God because, oftentimes people ask the question when they find out you're a preacher or a young preacher, which I don't know if I am anymore. My knees tell me differently. They ask you how you got called to ministry. And my call to ministry wasn't super spiritual, but it was when I first got saved, I had such a love for God, and people around me saw a call on my life. And it was really a pragmatic thing. I said, if God is calling, I'd rather not run for 10 years and then come back and do it God's way. But I might as well do it right now and not waste the time. Love justice because I don't think you can be a believer and not care about justice. And then love people because, I remember when I was in grade school, I'll never forget I was in homeroom class.
Okay.
Miss Halpern's homeroom class.
Okay.
My little friend asked me at 12 or 13, maybe 14, what do you think you were put on this earth to do?
Your friend, what grade was this?
This is, so I guess it would have to be middle school.
Okay.
If there was homeroom.
Very
middle
precocious
school.
friend. Okay.
Asked, what do you think you were put on this earth to do? Not really the question you get as a 12 or a 13-year-old. And I thought about it for about 40 minutes. And I came back and I said, I think I'm put on this earth to impact as many lives as possible in the days that I have. And so
At 12.
At 12, right. It's intense, isn't it?
When you were never young.
So intense. It's so intense.
Yeah.
So, but that's why I would say 3
Love
sentences: love God, love justice, and then love people.
Okay. And switching gears to talking about denial. And in season 1, I explained denial to be that refusal to accept the reality of a thing. It's a coping mechanism or a defense mechanism. I'd like to know specifically with regards to denial, has it ever helped you to cope in life and what has it done for you, if not that?
Well, let me first say that I thought season 1 was absolutely brilliant. I thought it was biblical. I thought it was theological. I thought it was psychological. I thought it was brilliant.
Mm.
You know, when I think about denial and I think about faith in particular,
Mm-hmm.
I often think about denial as a snare. There's a difference between a weapon or an enemy and a snare.
Mm-hmm.
An enemy is something that you see coming
Mm-hmm.
that's going to hinder you from where you're trying to go.
Okay.
But a snare, there's a quote that talks about like a bird to the fowler,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A snare is something that attracts you, that lures you,
Mm-hmm.
that draws you in,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately it keeps you from becoming all that you're called to be.
Mm.
And you made the connection in season 1
Mm-hmm.
that denial is a coping mechanism, and we all sort of love our coping mechanisms,
Yeah.
even if it's subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
We'll deny our ability.
Mm-hmm.
We'll deny our capability,
That's a good one.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it keeps us comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
but it ensnares us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing worse than somebody who's gifted and grounded.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the ability to fly,
Mm-hmm.
you've got all the gifts to fly,
Mm-hmm.
but you deny your own ability. That's a terrible thing. So I often think of denial in those ways. And I think there were times where I denied, that maybe I should do this or make this choice,
Mm-hmm.
probably because I was comfortable where I was. But I think the more I grew in my faith, the more I was willing to, step out on the water, do things that made me uncomfortable, to do it uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been something that's always, it's helped me.
So for you, denial kind of helped you to remain comfortable.
Yeah, I think it was negative in that it created limits that I should have never been there,
Yeah.
and comfort that was causing me to live beneath
Mm-hmm.
God's best for
Mm-hmm.
my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk about these things in terms of faith. I'm a preacher,
Mm-hmm.
I know
Yeah.
all of your audience, they may
Yeah.
not, be people of Christian faith,
Mm-hmm.
and so the way I apply these lessons, the way I've learned these lessons
Mm-hmm.
is grounded in my faith. And yeah, I've seen sort of denial put a cap on some things,
Mm-hmm.
because you've got to have a kind of strong belief in yourself to kind of really maximize your own potential and
Mm-hmm.
live life to the fullest and die empty and use every gift.
Mm-hmm.
That's an uncomfortable place, but it's often a place of, movement and blessing. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my question then is this something that happened once for you where you realized that you were using denial as a mechanism to protect your own comfort? Or is it something that you have to be mindful not to do because your instinct is to go into this place of denial that prevents you from leaving your comfort zone?
Yeah, so I mean, I think if I really reflect on it, I've seen denial manifest itself in my life in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just describing sort of what it looked like as far as not living up to your highest potential and denying sort of, what does it look like to live in a moment and say, you are created for this moment. This is your moment. Show up fully here,
Yeah.
because you are the solution to the problem that the world is waiting for.
Yeah.
Right. All of us are a solution to some problem, And so there's a kind of denial that we've got to be ready to accept those kinds of things about ourselves, see ourselves the way in my tradition where God sees us.
Mm-hmm.
But denial has shown up in my life in practical ways, where it wasn't just complacency. So I'll never forget, like, my father in ministry, when I was growing up, he was amazing. He'd run every morning.
Wow.
He ate the right things all the
That guy.
time.
Yeah.
He never went above 5 pounds overweight.
Wow.
He didn't seem to sleep.
Wow.
Reverend Dr. Floyd Flake, 40 years of ministry in New York, built one of the largest churches in the country. He did it while he was in Congress. So
Wow.
as if building the largest church in New York wasn't the only thing you do.
Right.
He was in Congress 5 days a week, then ran home to pastor a church on the weekend.
Whoa.
And I never forget. So he's my father in ministry. So I figured, well, that's what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And so I tried to run like him. I tried to do things like him. I was in my master's program. I was in school 5 days a week, would go and teach a Bible study at the end of the night, 2 hours away, then study the next day, and then be in
Nonstop.
worship all day, and then run back to school for, work on my master's on Monday, nonstop. And I had to realize that well, first of all, I learned that I was burnt out, my health was fading, and I was in denial about it. And I questioned my own ability because I figured you're young, you should be able to run, young man, run, I think I had to learn that that's good for him,
Yeah.
Yeah. So you brilliantly, did I say brilliantly already, talked about denial in the first session.
Use it referring to me.
You talked about denial in the first session.
Yeah.
And you brilliantly talked about it as sort of lying to yourself. But I also think denial shows up as an unknowing, not knowing yourself fully. Because lying is malicious and has a tone where it's deceptive, and we do that. We do that.
We do.
But sometimes we haven't been still enough.
Yeah.
We haven't been quiet enough. We haven't shut out enough of the noise in order to hear who we really are, where we should really be, what we should really be doing. And so I often think about denial as not knowing ourselves fully.
When did you get quiet enough to hear that for yourself? When you were running and just really trying to keep up to this model that you really wanted to be? When did it land for you that this is not how I'm going to be able to do this?
Yeah, I think honestly it's a journey. I think I'm always returning to that lesson. I'm always pausing to remember that lesson. I know how to pay attention now to the cues and the hints.
Yeah, what are those red flags when you
if
realize
I'm more tired, if I'm
Yeah.
operating out of
the reserves,
Yeah.
running on fumes? Yeah.
I've got to ask myself, is that really the life that I want? Does that really please God? And so I've got to pull back and adjust.
Yeah. Also, in that first season, I talked about the stages of denial, and the first stage just being rejecting the truth and rejecting the authenticity of it. And then the second stage being not even knowing anymore what's true for you because you're living in this place of always rejecting truth. Have you come to that point in your own life where you weren't sure anymore about what was true?